All right, this week, FBI Director Kash Patel announced a lawsuit against The Atlantic. He is claiming defamation after the outlet published a story that said he drank.
We are living in a golden age of wild animals being exposed to illicit substances, which is a nice segue into the case of Kash Patel, our future former director of the FBI, who's getting hammered this week over a report that says he's been getting hammered on the job. Patel on Monday filed a lawsuit against The Atlantic.
Things shifted fast the moment Jimmy Kimmel turned his attention toward Kash Patel and dropped a line that felt sudden, bold, and almost too unexpected to process right away. Whatever serious mood was in the room disappeared within seconds, replaced by a strange mix of sarcasm, confusion, and late-night chaos. Once the discussion moved toward the alleged drinking claims, the whole segment became even more attention-grabbing, with the kind of energy that makes people laugh, pause, and raise their eyebrows at the same time. It was one of those moments that felt too odd to ignore, but too entertaining to turn away from. And that is exactly why it pulled viewers in so quickly.
Patel is reportedly deeply concerned that he's about to get fired, why I don't know. Does this look like a paranoid guy to you? But the story says he has become known for bouts of excessive drinking and unexplained absences, so much so that on multiple occasions in the past year, members of his security detail had difficulty waking him because he was seemingly intoxicated. They requested brief.
Before getting deeper into it, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, because this is one of those stories that gets more surprising the longer it goes on. What first seemed like a regular late-night segment quickly moved into something far more unpredictable, almost as if the whole conversation suddenly changed direction. Jimmy Kimmel focused straight on the growing controversy around Kash Patel and did not bother easing into it gently. Instead, he stepped right into the middle of the situation with sharp sarcasm, quick timing, and a tone that made it difficult for anyone watching to look away or treat it like just another passing joke.
That the director's, quote, episodes of excessive drinking have alarmed his colleagues and is a recurring source of concern across the government. Patel denies this, and not just categorically, maniacally. He announced that he is suing The Atlantic for $250 million. The Atlantic issued a statement responding to that. They said, "We stand by our reporting on Kash Patel, and we will vigorously defend The Atlantic and our journalists against this meritless law."
The situation already sounded like something taken from an overcomplicated political drama. The kind where every new detail seems to add another unnecessary twist. Even before Kimmel added his own commentary, the headlines were doing enough on their own to make the story feel bigger, stranger, and more dramatic than expected. What could have been a straightforward controversy had already started turning into something filled with tension, curiosity, and a level of public attention that made it almost impossible to ignore.
The Senate Judiciary Committee grilled FBI Director Kash Patel.
It's an honor to be here with you today as the 9th Director of the FBI, to bring this fugitive to justice. We have also arrested, this may be the most important part, about to face charges at the same time last year. Ongoing investigations, not crime's free, and we're going to keep going. Lastly, I want to close with
the Kash Patel Senate hearings, brought to you by Flonase. Psst, psst, all good.
You know what? Don't make fun.
A report began making the rounds and quickly caught attention, raising concerns while spreading through more serious political circles. But then came the reaction, and somehow that became even louder than the original story. The denials, the drama, and the public response gave the whole situation a life of its own, turning it into something more chaotic, more unpredictable, and far more entertaining than anyone may have expected. That was exactly where Jimmy Kimmel found his opening, because when a story arrives with this much built-in confusion, ignoring it would almost feel like missing the whole purpose of late-night commentary.
Are completely false, a hit piece, but the journalist who wrote the story, her name is Sarah Fitzpatrick, says she spoke to more than 24 people, including current and former FBI officials. Her version of the story makes it sound like Patel was blacked out more than the president's name in the Trump Epstein files. And this comes the same week that a federal judge dismissed the defamation lawsuit Patel filed against a former FBI agent who said he has been, quote, visible at nightclubs far more than he has been on the 7th floor of the...
At the center of everything was an allegation serious enough to make people stop and pay attention. The reported claim that someone being considered for a major government role may have had issues involving excessive drinking while on duty is not the kind of detail that quietly disappears in the background. It stays in the conversation, especially when the position being discussed is connected to discipline, judgment, and high-level responsibility. Kimmel approached the subject with clear disbelief, almost like the jokes were forming themselves as the story unfolded. The contrast between the polished image expected from such a role and the nature of the allegation became the perfect setup for sarcasm, and Kimmel used that gap to build one sharp punchline after another.
Patel was summoned to explain why they refused to release the Epstein files they promised to release. He was dodgy, sketchy, sniffy, combative, and just unpleasant overall. He couldn't even answer a question from fellow Republican John Kennedy.
Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday.
Forget yesterday. How about tomorrow?
What made the story even harder to dismiss was not only the allegation itself, but the number of people reportedly connected to the reporting behind it. The mention of more than 24 individuals, including current and former officials, gave the issue a weight that could not easily be brushed off as a small rumor. Kimmel did not need to exaggerate much, because the number alone already made the situation feel serious. Then came the response, and instead of calming things down, it pushed everything into even more dramatic territory. A $250 million defamation lawsuit is not exactly a quiet denial, and Kimmel leaned into that with visible amusement. A figure that large turns a controversy into a spectacle, and in many ways it brings even more attention to the very claims it is trying to fight.
In the story is that Patel's been so worried about losing his job. Around 2 weeks ago, he had some trouble logging into his computer and freaked out because he assumed he'd been fired and they locked him out. The article said he called at least 9 people to tell him he had been let go. Then turned out it was an IT issue and he got back in. So Patel angrily denied that story.
The whole situation slowly became less about shutting down the story and more about accidentally making people focus on it even harder. As if the controversy did not already have enough layers, there was also past legal history that added more depth to the moment. The mention of an earlier defamation case being dismissed gave Kimmel another angle to work with, because patterns can make separate events feel connected in the public mind. Older claims about time allegedly spent in nightclubs rather than in a federal office made the newer allegations feel even more loaded when placed beside them. Kimmel did not need to invent the drama, because the clash between the expectations of the role and the accusations surrounding it was already doing most of the work.
He still has no explanation for why they won't release the files, and no explanation for why Epstein's primary accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, was suddenly transferred to a country club prison after meeting with Trump's lawyer. Eventually, frustration boiled over, and Senator Cory Booker didn't just grill Patel, he flame-broiled him live in front of everyone.
Here's the thing, Mr. Patel. I think you're not going to be around long. I think this might be your last oversight hearing.
Then came a detail that felt like it belonged in a completely different story. The reported locked out incident added another layer of confusion and pushed the entire situation closer to absurdity. A simple technical problem would normally be solved and forgotten, but here it reportedly turned into something much bigger, with confusion over whether someone had been removed or fired. That kind of leap from a login issue to political panic felt dramatic, unexpected, and perfectly suited for a late-night segment already built around disbelief. What made it even stranger was how the denial of that incident seemed to circle back into the story later, making the whole thing feel even more tangled.
The best way to address rumors of erratic behavior is to hold an even more erratic press conference.
Did you communicate with anyone that you thought you were fired after you were unable to log into?
The problem with you and your report, don't cut me off. You asked a question.
Straightforward question.
The problem with you and your baseless reporting is that is an absolute lie.
Straightforward question. Did you talk to anybody about whether you thought
The simple answer to your question is you are lying. I was never locked out of my systems.
The contradiction between publicly denying a claim and then referencing the same issue in legal filings added exactly the kind of irony Jimmy Kimmel was not gonna let pass. It was the type of detail that calls for a pause, a raised eyebrow, and a careful breakdown. Then came the press conference, which somehow made the situation feel even more unpredictable. Instead of settling the controversy, the lack of direct answers appeared to keep it alive. Kimmel turned that awkward tension into comedy, using the gap between what people expected and what actually happened as fuel for sharper jokes. The point was not only what was said or avoided, but how the entire moment unfolded in a way that seemed to raise even more questions than it answered.
Meanwhile, did you see our FBI director whooping it up with the Olympic hockey team in Italy? Team USA beat heavily favored Team Canada in overtime. They won their first gold medal in 46 years, the first one since the Miracle on Ice. The bad news is Kash Patel, not only was he at the game, he was in the locker after the game. You can see here he is bouncing around like the Adderall bunny or something, pumping his fists. Why he was there, why he needed to be.
By the time the segment found its rhythm, it had moved beyond basic late-night commentary and turned into a layered story filled with humor, skepticism, and steady disbelief. The audience was not only reacting to one joke or one claim, they were watching how each detail connected to the next. That larger pattern made the whole thing feel chaotic, yet strangely consistent. Kimmel's strongest move was letting the humor come naturally from the facts already surrounding the controversy. The mix of serious allegations, dramatic responses, confusing explanations, and public reaction made the story difficult to ignore and almost impossible to discuss without comedy entering the room.
Anyone that says the opposite is lying. Thank you.
The lawsuit that you filed says that directly.
Look, man, stop. You're being extraordinarily rude.
You know they don't like that in that administration. Now keep in mind, that the guy asking the question, that wasn't the reporter who wrote the Atlantic story. It was another reporter just asking if the story was true. And also, there is a specific account of Patel not being able to access his computer in the lawsuit he filed.
From a comedy angle, what made the situation stand out was how every attempt to control the story seemed to create even more uncertainty. Every denial, legal move, and public response added another layer to a situation that already had plenty of material. Kimmel did not need to stretch the story too far because the sequence of events already felt almost unreal on its own. Beneath the jokes, the segment also raised bigger questions about judgment, reliability, and public perception. Kimmel was not simply finding humor in the allegations. He was also pointing toward what those allegations suggest when viewed against the expectations of leadership, responsibility, and public trust.
He paid for it. He flew there on the FBI jet, which is especially rich coming from the man who criticized his predecessor, Christopher Wray, for doing far, far less.
I'm not the defund everything guy. I'm just saying Chris Wray doesn't need a government-funded G5 jet to go to vacation. Maybe we ground that plane. $15,000 every time it takes off. This is odd.
And now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to do Jaeger bombs with the hockey team in Italy.
As the story kept unfolding, one thing became clear. When a controversy includes alleged workplace drinking, massive lawsuits, conflicting explanations, and a press conference that creates more questions than answers, it stops feeling like ordinary news and turns into a full spectacle. In Jimmy Kimmel's hands, that spectacle became sharp entertainment, with every new twist giving viewers another reason to keep watching. The deeper the situation went, the more it looked like an example of how not to manage a controversy already under public attention.
Once the allegations were out there, every response added another layer for people to analyze, and Kimmel leaned into that growing spiral with the kind of amused disbelief that works perfectly when a story keeps escalating on its own.
That you have not been intoxicated or absent during your tenure as FBI director.
I can say unequivocally that I never listen to the fake news mafia. And as when they get louder, it just means I'm doing my job.
So, no, then is the answer? No. He's so wound up. He's so angry. If only there was some kind of bottle of like a magic liquid he could drink and it would calm his nerves in some way.
When someone linked to a role that demands discipline, precision, and composure becomes associated with allegations suggesting the opposite, the contrast becomes hard to ignore. Kimmel did not have to exaggerate much because the irony was already sitting in plain view. On the other side, the strong denial and aggressive legal response created a constant push and pull, where viewers were not only watching the claims, but also watching how those claims were being handled. That space is where Kimmel's commentary worked best. The more intense the response became, the easier it was for him to highlight the imbalance. The lawsuit especially carried a theatrical quality, because a number that large does not simply signal disagreement, it signals escalation. And escalation almost always attracts more attention.
He probably won't have to worry about any more of those pesky investigations from the FBI. FBI Director Kash Patel sat for an interview with Fox News last night. And when I say sat, before I share this, I feel it's important to let you know the footage you are about to see was not altered in any way.
Peter, thank you. Welcome back to Quantico, Virginia, the FBI Academy, and we're joined by FBI Director Kash Patel.
They're so cute when they're little, aren't they? Oh my, I would have loved to see him.
Kimmel's take kept circling back to the irony of trying to shut down a story in a way that only keeps it alive longer. The situation became almost paradoxical because the attempts to control the narrative appeared to feed the narrative instead. He picked up on that shift with sharp timing, especially when responses to claims about erratic behavior seemed to carry their own unpredictable energy. The segment also showed how repetition can shape public perception over time. When similar themes continue appearing across different moments, whether involving nightlife, workplace behavior, or public reactions, people naturally begin connecting those pieces, even when each detail technically stands on its own.
Patel defended his little field trip weekly. He said he was at the Olympics to protect U.S. athletes by tasting their beer to make sure it isn't poisoned. And then you got Blobby Orr, who celebrated the hockey gold by posting this dumb AI video of...
What stood out most was how small details suddenly became major parts of the story. A login issue should have been a simple technical matter, something fixed quickly and forgotten. Instead, it reportedly turned into a moment of panic that added more tension to an already messy situation. Kimmel focused on that escalation, because moving from a computer problem to fears of being fired is not a minor jump. It is a dramatic leap that made the entire story feel even more unstable. Rather than calming the controversy, the moment extended it and strengthened the sense that control was slipping. The visible tension, sharp tone, and lack of clear engagement created an atmosphere that felt charged instead of reassuring. And Kimmel used that energy to show how efforts to restore confidence can sometimes end up doing the opposite.